Hack your potential using a growth mindset to succeed at MIT and beyond with Lourdes Aleman.
My name is Lourdes. I did my PhD here in the biology department, and after graduating from biology, I decided to switch to science education and worked in the biology department for a long time on software tools to help students learn how to design experiments. So these are difficult concepts that students have a hard time, and they're difficult to teach in a classroom. So I was helping faculty design tools for these things, and I have since continued to migrate more into education. I teach for the Teaching and Learning Lab, and they have a teaching certificate program for graduate students and postdocs on essentially best practices for teaching and learning. I'm one of the instructors for that class. The concept of mindset comes from this researcher, Carol Dweck. She's a professor at Stanford. Carol Dweck has been studying the area of behavioral psychology for the past 40 years or so. She wanted to know why, when you put individuals in a challenging situation, do you tend to see two very different kinds of responses? Sometimes you see that individuals will thrive, will find the challenge fun, will run towards a challenge and not be put off by the fact that they might not be able to meet that challenge. And why other individuals instead become helpless in the face of a challenge, or they persist with the same sort of strategy that is not necessarily working. So she wanted to answer that question. So she and her colleagues and students have come up with this term mindset that sort of summarizes a body of research for the past 30 years. It turns out that in this framework of mindset, there are two extremes. So know that we're talking about extremes, but we'll get to talk later on during the talk about ways in which people are a little bit of both. But it helps to start with the extremes so that we can compare and contrast. So on one side is those individuals with a fixed mindset. Individuals with a fixed mindset believe that intelligence, ability, human traits essentially are hard-coded. You're born with a certain amount of intelligence and ability. There's not much you can do to change them. Those with a growth mindset are the opposite. They believe that intelligence and ability can grow over time with the right experiences, the right mentorship, the right feedback, etc. So let's see how they differ in terms of how they view effort, goals, what kind of attribution they do when they encounter failure, how they attribute failure, what kind of strategies they employ, how do they feel about feedback and the resulting behavior. It turns out that if you believe that intelligence and ability are fixed quantities or fixed entities, you're going to see effort, for the most part, you're going to see effort as a sign of weakness. So how do we interpret that at MIT? Of course, everybody who's MIT has had to put a lot of effort. So in the context of MIT, when I think about this in terms of if something is difficult to learn. Right? If something is difficult to learn, then folks who are more fixed will tend to say, well, I'm really not good at X. Okay? Those who are more growth mindset see effort, an extraordinary amount of effort, particularly in the areas of learning, as part of the learning process. Learning is hard. Learning new things is very difficult. Mastering skills is very difficult. Of course, they require a lot of effort. Okay, how about goals? So if you are fixed, meaning you attribute, you have a certain amount of intelligence and ability, and you're born with that, not much you can do to change it, you try to protect how much people see your weaknesses, because you don't want others to uncover areas of deficiencies. So what do? You try to choose goals that you know you'll do really well. You know you'll meet these goals really well. You'll perform really well on these goals. So someone with a growth mindset is not so concerned about performance and is much more concerned with learning. And what they're going to try to do is push themselves a little bit further every time, seeking experiences that will in the end grow their abilities and skills. Okay, how about attribution of failure? So if you're fixed, you're going to attribute failure. You're going to either completely internalize failure. As I said before, I'm not good at this. I don't have enough ability. I'm bad. Where am I? So people don't tend to say I'm bad at math, but that's something that a lot of students say. I'm bad at math, or I can't sing, or I can't dance, whatever it might be. Or the opposite is also true, which is you completely externalize the failure and everybody else is at fault. So it was the teacher's fault, it was my study group's fault, whatever it might be. It's the postdoc's fault if you're working in a lab, whatever it might be. Okay? How about for growth? So for growth, it's not that in a growth mindset, you sometimes don't see that maybe you didn't put enough effort, is that you're able to look at the situation more objectively and diagnose what's your contribution to the failure process versus the contribution of those around you, or versus the contribution of the atmosphere, the environment in which you are currently in. Because sometimes people try really hard and try to do things very hard, but change is not possible because of things in the environment. But someone with a growth mindset is able to more accurately diagnose those things. Okay, how about strategies? So someone who's fixed will become totally helpless, or the opposite is true, as I talked about before, will persevere with the same strategy. So I had a friend who failed her MCATs, I think twice, and had a really hard time shifting her study methods, even though she had failed the MCATs twice. And she just continued persevering with the same strategy. Someone with a growth mindset will double down, but they will also ask for help. They will seek feedback. If things are not working out, right? They're going to ask for somebody, the feedback from somebody who knows that area or that content or whatever it might be. That gets us to feedback, which is really important in this framework. So someone with a fixed mindset will try to avoid feedback. They are going to try as much as possible, if it's positive feedback, if it sort of confirms some ability or skill they have, it's welcome. But as soon as it's negative feedback or constructive, shut down. How about someone with growth mindset? They seek feedback. They want to improve, so feedback is really important. Those with fixed mindset might lose interest or withdraw. Sometimes self-sabotage, because you don't want to, again, protection mechanism. You don't want to say, I'm not good at this, so you might postpone doing the work until the very last minute, so then you can tell yourself, I just didn't give myself enough time. So self-sabotage is another way in which folks with a fixed mindset might deal with really difficult challenges. And then those in the growth mindset generally find ways around it.
So is being fixed bad and being growth good? Are there people who succeed with a fixed mindset?
So it turns out, and we don't have time to talk about the research behind it, but it turns out you can do quite well with a fixed mindset. Now, when you encounter a big challenge, being more growth-oriented will allow you to recover and learn from that challenge more productively.
If you're interested in learning more about growth mindset research, there are many studies about this topic. For example, a study by Moser et al., 2011.